How to get from how to why and back again. So it's nice to see y'all today. Me and my co-presenter are both peer specialists at the Portland VA. I'm an Air Force veteran. I've been working as a peer specialist for the last 9 years. I've been in the mental health field for about 15. I got my degree in 2006, mostly to figure out my own brain, I think like a lot of people do. And yeah, I'm pretty happy to be here. Brian's also been working as a peer specialist for the last 8 years here at the Portland VA. He's trained as a whole health coach facilitator, and they do a lot of training around how to talk with people. I thought he was a great co-facilitator for this. And he was also the Peer of the Year last year for all of the Portland VA area, which is pretty amazing. So I'm really stoked to have him on as my co-presenter today. So we're going to go over 4 different subjects, giving a little tiny break in between each one for Q&A. I'm going to try and burn through this because we have a lot to do and not a lot of time. So first thing we'll be covering is why important anyway? Like, what's the point? Why is why something that we should even think about? We're going to talk about how person-centered communication really helps when you're working one-on-one with somebody, help them get past the clutter and into what is really important to them. What are some of the components of person-centered communication? And I know person-centered communication, I don't know what to call this. I think that's what it's called. So that's what I called it. But yeah, it goes by a lot of names. And we're going to have a little practice session. So I'm going to do a little Q&A with Brian, and then we're going to break into some breakout groups, and y'all going to get a chance to practice this together, which should be a lot of fun. I always find it to be extremely nerve-wracking, and you're going to be kind of randomly mixed and matched, so you don't know who you're going to end up practicing with. So hold on to your seat. So I want to start this with a story. When I got married, my wife brought a car into the relationship. It's one of those toaster cars. I don't know if you've ever seen them. Anybody seen those toaster cars before? The Scions are kind of like a box on wheels, and they came out in the early 2000s. She loved it. The reason she got it was she thought it was like a gangster mobile, which is blows my mind because I have no idea where she got that from. But she thought it looked really tough, this little toaster car. And it's been through a lot. We've moved couches in it. We've moved dressers in it. We've gone through 3 moves and filled that thing up. It's seen the birth of our kids. It's seen a lot of, ups and downs in our relationship. And it's sitting at 170,000 miles now, and it's still running like a top. And to my wife, it's still her car, which I totally get. But we had a problem come up. We had some squeaky belts, and it's just been getting worse and worse. Every time we jump into the darn thing, the belts start squealing. If you stop at a stop sign, they start squealing. And I wonder if any of you have ever had a car with squeaky belts before. Yeah, it is pretty awful, fairly embarrassing. Julie brings it up a lot, how embarrassed she is to take off from her friend's house and kind of wake up the whole neighborhood. And this has been going on for a couple of years now, I would like people to kind of write in a bit. What do you think I should do about these belts? What do you think? Any ideas?
We got fix them, replace them,
Brian.
see a mechanic.
See a mechanic, okay. What else? So that sounds, see a mechanic, that's a good idea. I should just fix them, okay. What else? What do you think? What should I do about these belts?
Bar soap, it says. WD-40.
A little bit of soap. What's that? WD-40?
Yeah.
I haven't heard that one before. Nothing.
Nothing. Yeah.
That's one of my favorites right there. I'm gonna hold on a second. I can see myself, and that drives me bananas when I'm talking to people.
I like that one. Turn the radio up so you don't hear it. Turn the radio up so you don't hear it.
Turn the radio up. So a big challenge here is that I know how to do all this stuff. I know how to. We've got enough money to take it to a mechanic. I've heard the soap trick before. I've never heard the WD-40 trick. I wonder if that would just make it so the belts don't work anymore. It's probably a good trick. I could fix it myself. There's just so many things I could do. And the reason I'm not fixing them isn't because I don't know how to fix them. In fact, I couldn't even figure out why I wasn't fixing them, intrinsically speaking. Uh, and what I ended up doing was I kind of had this as a subject for a one-on-one peer counseling session. And I had a peer talk with me about it. And it turns out I was just scared, you know? I was scared to take a leap and try to do something I'd never done before, even if it drastically improved the quality of life for me and my wife and got the car working and reduced our level of embarrassment. I mean, there was a fear that I had down inside of me that was kind of preventing me from getting this done. So I think for me, it wasn't, I knew about the how, like I knew how to fix it. I've known how to fix it. I just didn't know why I wasn't fixing it, and I have plenty of reasons to fix it. So what are some reasons that people get stuck in a state of mind, like stuck with bad squealing belts in your car that don't have to be there? Anybody? Why do people get stuck?
I got depression, scared of the unknown, anxiety, comfort, you get used to it, fear,
The devil that you know is better than the devil that you don't. A lot of fear.
overwhelming, yeah,
Oh, can feel overwhelming.
no motivation,
Yeah,
procrastination.
yeah. Just find something better to do. There's always something else to do, right? Like I don't have to fix those belts. I got about 50 other projects going on at all times. I came up with a lot of that stuff. People have blind spots, just parts of their life that they don't see because it's just part of their life, fear of change, misinformation they've just heard or read or talked about the wrong things. Trauma wiring is a big one, right? We go through some significant traumas in our childhood or as adults, and it rewires the way our brain works, and it can lead to a lot of misunderstandings and just kind of seeing the world through a really rough filter sometimes. Might be just a lack of resources. When we first got married, I just didn't have the money, really. $30 for a set of belts doesn't sound like much, but when you're just scraping by and doing your best to pay rent, that was rough. And there might be some really profound reasons why someone makes a decision that they make, or they don't, or they get stuck, or it might be really mundane. Maybe it's just not important to me. Maybe the belts just don't. Maybe I can tune them out, turn up the radio. It's not a big deal to me, even though it's a big deal to my wife. You know, but it might be really profound. Like maybe I had just a deep-seated fear of cars. And I don't want to pay somebody else to do it. Anyway, that's another fear right there. It's just a lot of different reasons. I love BJ Fogg. He's done some great YouTube TED Talks. He's done a lot of research around what it takes to get motivation up to do new things. I'd highly recommend looking him up sometime. But a big part of what he says is that the harder something is, the higher level of motivation. So you really need a lot of, to do something easy, like take the garbage out. I might need like a lower level of motivation, but the bigger, more complicated, more difficult the task is, the more motivation I'm going to need. Um, I'm sure a lot of you know about this. Making a big change, especially if you're working with somebody who's struggling with addiction, or you know, or diet, or just there's something in their life that's really tearing them apart, and they don't see it or they don't want to see it.
I went to the window and I was like, "Listen, I need your strongest coffee that is
Thank you. The stronger that motivation's got to be. So there's a couple types of motivation. There's extrinsic motivation and there's intrinsic motivation. This is all kind of outside of the box. I don't have to talk about this too much, but mostly it's just extrinsic motivation is stuff that comes in from the outside. So if I'm doing something, for positive regard or for an outside reward, it can be helpful, but it's not going to help with a long-term motivation. It's going to help me get into something really hard right away. Like, I've struggled with addiction personally, and stopping I had a lot of reasons to stop. I was desperately lonely. You know, I was angry. I was hurt all the time, scared and anxious. But even with a lot of those extrinsic motivators, like just having a horrible relationship with my family, it wasn't enough to get me to stop. It really took more of an intrinsic motivation and finding reasons on the inside, getting mad or just, just getting tired of being tired, finding this reasons to do things that came from inside of me to make a big change in my life and to sober up, and get clean. I'm sort of going off the rails a little bit here. So I guess the big takeaway here is that intrinsic motivation, stuff that comes from the inside, can be way more powerful than stuff that comes from the outside. Um, I doing this presentation today, I'm not getting paid for this. I don't have to be here. There's no real reason that I should be doing this except that I like to. I love interacting. This is a subject that I'm passionate about. I love talking to you all. I want to make the world a little bit better place, and I'm getting all this like really heavy internal boost from being here. This is going to look good on my resume, I think. Might look good on my performance review at the end of the year. So that's a nice extrinsic bonus. But really, the reason I'm here talking with you today is because of a lot of stuff coming from the inside. So I was hoping to bring Brian on for a second. A big part of his role at the VA is to talk to people about what they value uh, and what's important to them. So I asked him to jump in and talk a little bit about values today and why values are important when you're helping someone find intrinsic motivation.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron.
Thanks, Brian.
So when we have a clear view of our values, we can make choices about friends, work, and lifestyle that will make us feel the most fulfilled, right? And so research really shows that living and working day to day in accordance with our values is correlated with the greater levels of satisfaction and well-being. So that's why it's important to identify, what our values are.
Brian, do you think you can give an example of someone you were working with that was really struggling, but maybe kind of found a core value that helped them move forward a little bit, or maybe I should have asked about this earlier.
um, so I guess I was working with a veteran I don't know, 3 years ago now, and he Vietnam veteran, Army, infantry, and he was had severe PTSD, and he's never gone to the VA for any kind of services like disability or anything like that. And so he's just kind of scraping by. And so he had this value of self pride, being able to sustain his life by himself. He didn't need help from anybody. So instead of sticking by that value, he took the value of going with the VA and ended up getting a service connected of 70%, which totally changed his life. And so accepting that help and kind of moving away from that value of, I guess ego, really changed his life in a positive way.
So you helped him find motivation to kind of get out of his own way in that circumstance and accept help.
Right. Yeah.
Thanks, Brian. I guess the big takeaway here, and that other stuff was sort of just thrown in, was that we often don't know why we're doing something. I mean, I guess if we knew everything that was going on in the deep reaches of our mind, we'd probably be a lot healthier. But there are so many things that I do in my life, ways that I act that surprise even me, and I'm sure you've all had that experience in life that you do something that just really, you look back at it afterwards and say, why did I do that? Or why was I thinking that? You know, um, I'm a big believer in blind spots, that we all have them, areas of our life that are just so hardwired that we don't even see them ourselves, and the bigger the blind spot, the bigger the hardwiring, which is why I think it's really important to work with somebody about what they value and what they really value at their deepest core. If you can help someone identify that, you can help move forward. I was working with a vet who he worked in a warehouse when he was in the Army, and he loved it. He just thought it was the greatest job ever. I've never heard anyone talk about working in a warehouse being their favorite thing ever before meeting this guy, And funny thing happened is he got out of the Army, he got into the civilian world and got himself a job in a warehouse and just did not like it at all. And he couldn't figure it out. because I was in the Army, I loved working in a warehouse. It was just great. And then I get out in the civilian world and I'm just hitting a wall, you know, he just for some reason. So we really got down to what he loved. He liked being the person that everyone had to go to. Like he knew where the vital equipment was. He liked being like a strong resource for the people he was working with. In the Army, even if you're doing a job that's considered kind of mundane, he had upward mobility. So he liked having the ability to gain rank, to kind of gain importance, to kind of move up in his career. He really loved that. He loved serving other people, like talking with them when they'd come in to pick up stuff and helping them find what they need, even if they didn't really know what they need when they got there. This is stuff that was really important to him. But you know, getting into kind of a dead end job out in the civilian world, and sorry about saying dead end job, but getting into a warehouse job where he was stuck, there was no room for upward mobility. He wasn't interacting with anybody. He was just unloading and loading all day. It, all those things that he loved about the job in the Army just weren't there. So it was interesting talking to him about that and sort of figuring out what he loved to do and how he can translate that into a new career in the civilian world that he'd find as fulfilling as working in the warehouse in the Army world. I threw this next thing in just for fun, and you've probably all heard of this, or maybe you haven't, the Dunning-Kruger effect. This was one of my favorite things in psychology because I just think it's super fun. Um, I spent 10 years on the road, and then I went to work for the VA driving people around, and I got a lot of feedback from my fellow staff members that I'm a horrible driver, which I was like, you are bananas. There's no way that I'm a bad driver. I spent all these years on the road. That couldn't possibly be true. Um, yeah, it turns out I was making some pretty key errors in traffic. I wasn't paying attention. I was, yeah, doing a lot of stuff that's swerving off the road sometimes. I'm actually a fairly bad driver, so that's something I've been working on. But there's this thing called the Dunning-Kruger effect. This is just, like I said, for fun, called the unknown unknowns, and that you don't know what you don't know. Which I mean, it seems counterintuitive, but you just don't know it. So the less confidence you are at something, like the worse you are at something, the higher your overall confidence is going to be. So they found when they've tested people that if they're really bad at something, I mean, like really, really bad, like they don't know anything about it, they feel like they're the most confident people on the planet. But if you look at the other side of the scale here, people that are fairly confident in something or competent also kind of have this weird little dip here because they don't know how much other people know. And so they have a drop in confidence, even though they're fairly good at something. But I think the Dunning-Kruger effect might come into play sometimes when you're working with somebody who might not know what they don't know. I've got an example from my own life. I joined a local school board thinking I'd be a fiscal hawk, that I'd jump on and make sure that they weren't spending the money on stuff that wasn't in the best interest of my kids. You know, not knowing that I know very little to nothing about accounting or about how to go through a phone book size $200 million plus budget is just something I don't know how to do at all, not even a little bit. I was just so drastically ignorant on the topic that I thought I was amazing. And it's been interesting to find out that I'm still learning. So just as an aside, like I said, BJ Fogg's got some amazing TED Talks about forming habits and what you can do to start today. And the little, you know, happiness, finding habit forming stuff that they've found over the years. So we're going to take a little break right here just for questions. Does anybody have any questions so far? What do you think? Am I killing it? Am I bombing? How am I doing?
There's a question in the chat. How do you help those you support with their own self-esteem?
Ah, that's really solid. I think we're going to be talking about collaborative communication. And I think personally, when you help somebody figure out what's important to them, it naturally boosts their self-esteem. When I helped that veteran figure out why he didn't like that warehouse job, you know, he's like, oh, it's not because there's something wrong with me. It's because there's something wrong with the job, you know? Sometimes, a lot of times, I think self-esteem is really interconnected to people's values. And if they're not doing things that they find intrinsically valuable, valuable to their own life, that it's going to have a damaging effect on their self-esteem, if that makes any sense. So this, just helping people find their why can be a massive ego boost. Do you
So
have any?
there's also another question. Will the slides be available? And can you show the TED Talk slide again?
Yes, they'll be available, absolutely. And yeah, I can share that again. I can, if you want to leave your email at the end of the presentation, I will email you a copy of the slides. Last year, they put them up on the website, but it took them so long that I felt bad for the people that I said, I mean, not long, like maybe a couple of weeks, but I felt bad when I let people know that they'd be on the website and it took a while to get there. So you can either search the website later, all the presentations at Peerpocalypse are going to be on there, which is really cool, or just leave your email and I'll be happy to send you a copy.
And I will try to capture those emails and get them to you, Aaron.
Thank you. Okay. I really appreciate that. So collaborative communication. We're going to watch a little video to kind of kick this off. You've probably seen this video. If you haven't, I don't know, I find it to be extremely hilarious. Let me just make sure you're going to be able to hear this because I've had a problem before. There we go.
It's just, there's all this pressure, you know? And sometimes it feels like it's right up on me and I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head, and it's relentless. And I don't know if it's gonna stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me the most, is that I don't know if it's ever gonna stop.
Yeah. Well, you do have a nail in your head.
It is not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because, I mean, I'll bet if we got that out of there...
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing...
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
Yeah, see, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail
See, you're
out.
not even listening now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
It's just, sometimes it's like there's this achy, I don't know what it is. And I'm not sleeping very well at all. And all my sweaters are snagged. I mean, all of them.
That sounds really hard.
It is. Thank you. Ow!
Oh, come on. If you would just...
Don't.
Try to see things my way. Do I have to keep on?
Sorry, that's pretty cheeky, but I'm sure that you've worked with people in the past, or even just family and friends, people that you love, who might not be able to see something that's really obvious to you. And I know people have worked with me or have been part of my life that have seen super obvious stuff that I just couldn't see because it was right there in the middle of my blind spot or my fear spot, an area that I didn't want to see because it was too terrifying for some reason deep at my core. A bit of that is trauma wiring. So I want to do a little proviso in the beginning of this. This is all training that we get at the when we become peer specialists. They always talk about communication and how to communicate with somebody in a person-centered way. So this isn't a new topic. I just had this experience after I graduated with my certification. I got on the job, and all of a sudden I was like, my God, I wish I would have practiced this a lot more because it's way harder when you're actually doing it than when you're just talking about it. And so that's what I'm going to be talking about today. Is how to have more person-centered conversations and how to practice it on a regular basis, because it is counterintuitive and it can be hard. And I think as peer specialists, we're in a unique position to be really good at this because we've all gone through some pretty traumatic stuff, and trauma is really good at helping someone read somebody else better or kind of at a deeper level. So what is person-centered communication? It's a form of communication where the person you're working with, not me, are the expert. I want to find out what you know. I'm not trying to impart what I know. It's a way to create an open and connected dialogue with somebody. It's a crucial part of the peer specialist certification training. I'm sure you all had a chance to practice this when you went through training. It really embodies the collaborative spirit of peer support, which is awesome. It helps people find their own path through recovery, which is like part of our job core, right? I'm not here to show you where to go. I'm here to help you figure out where you want to go. It is a trailblazing technique. I believe it was championed by peer support in general, and then later adopted by the rest of the mental health world. So right now, motivational interviewing is what clinical practitioners of psychology are using to work with people. Whole health coaches here at the VA. Whole health is amazing, by the way. I know there's whole health out in the civilian world too, but they're being traded in a modified, more future-oriented version of MI to help people find what's valuable to them and figure out what can enhance their own life. And the corporate business world, they use a version called AI, or appreciated inquiry, to help people find out what's important to them, more with a productivity standpoint. So what does it do for the person that you're working with? It really helps them see their own minds and motivation. You know, we are mirrors for somebody else to see themselves in, you know? The idea when I'm working with someone is I want them to be able to see themselves in me, even if we're drastically different people. We still have a lot of the same core values, hopefully in common, or maybe not. But hopefully I'm a mirror to someone to get what's in their head out so they can see it in me outside of themselves and understand it better. It creates a really safe space for exploration. So it's a way for us to kind of create a comfort zone for someone to kind of dive into some of the wiring that's kind of a little sideways, or some of the really painful spots that they haven't wanted to take a look at. I'll tell you what, nothing is scarier in this world than looking at my own deepest, darkest fears, you know, and it helps them, gives them a safe space to do that. Might help them identify emotional cues that they don't understand. I know a lot of my blind spots are connected to like fear coming from trauma at a younger age, or just stuff I haven't wanted to look at. And a lot of that, like, why did I do that? Kind of comes from that, some of those blind spots, you know. And when I'm working with somebody else, it really helps me to see that outside of myself. Kind of get out of some of those routines that I've been stuck in for years that have been doing me damage, but I just can't seem to pull myself out of. It helps someone see the next steps, like where do you want to go next in your recovery? Where do you want to go next in your life? I told you about that veteran who was kind of baffled by not liking the warehouse job he was in, and it really helped him to figure out what he really liked about it and what sort of career he should look for. What are some of the key components of a career that he would help him find fulfillment in the long term? Whoops. Uh-oh, I went backwards there. And it can move someone away from their script. I know that you've worked with people who sort of have a story that they like to tell over and over again, especially when you get close to like a painful or scary subject. Usually that person will launch into their story, and that can be challenging when you're helping somebody find a new way to be, or a new path in their own recovery, helping them chart a new destination. It's hard when they keep wanting to go to Disneyland, and you're like, well, Disneyland's great, but the lines are really long. Let's go to Great America. We can get on some rides, you know? And they're just like, well, but I love Disneyland. Let me tell you all about Disneyland again and that great experience I had on Magic Mountain when I was 10. You know, so it helps get people off of their scripts, the stories that they might be telling to avoid some pain. And finally, it just shows them that they matter. Like, you're really important to me. So I'm giving you my full focus. And not only that, but I'm sending stuff back to you that you're telling to me to show you that I have a deeper level of understanding. So what does it do from the peer specialist? Takes away the expert, takes away the need to be the expert in this relationship. I remember when I was new to peer specialist, and for the first couple of years, it was really hard when you have to have the perfect thing to say, you know? I'm working with someone who's feeling a lot of pain, who's been through a lot of stuff, and they're trying to get better. And I just need to have the perfect thing to say to help them get through so that they feel amazing, and it validates my job as a peer specialist, because I'm the expert and I'm important, and I need to have that perfect thing to say. So that takes that away, and it puts the ownership back on the person that you're working with. I don't have to own your problems because there's nothing I can really do about them, honestly. But there's a lot you can do about it, and let's help you chart a path to figuring out where you want to be. Creates a really strong trust bond between you and the person you're working with, and it can make a huge difference in someone's life. I have been working with people before, and it's so frustrating sometimes when I can see the nail in their head so clearly, because I've done a lot of that stuff, but they don't see it, you know, and it's very frustrating. And you can't convince them that they have a nail in their head because they just don't want to know, or can't really know, or it's so deeply buried in some hard stuff that they don't want to see it. So it helps you move that past that stuck spot, which is great. You know, let's get past that. Let's find out what's really going on. Let's help you chart a path to wellness that's going to work for you. Let's help you explore some of those deep recesses in a safe way that might clear up some of the mystery, so you don't get stuck in that same pattern every time. It gets me out of my own way. Shoot, man. I can't tell you how many things I knew 9 years ago that I know are wrong now, or I think differently of now, you know, or 15 years ago or 20 years ago. Gosh, like I used to think everybody's got to do the 12-step thing. And the 12-step thing is amazing and it works really well for me, but that's not the path that's brought everyone to wellness, you know? Some people have done it through church, some people have done it through community support groups like NAMI. You know, people have found you know, charted their own ways to recovery that didn't follow the path that I thought would be the perfect path. I didn't even know really what I needed. And I know a lot more about that now. I'll probably know a lot more about that in 10 years. But since what I know is a moving target, if I'm telling you what to do based on what I know, a lot of times it's going to have some big flaws in it. So it helps get me out of my own way. So let's stop again for questions. Any questions so far? What do y'all feel like? Any doubters out there? Because I kind of sensing a little doubt. No. So what do we got in the chat box, Melissa?
Lots of email requests for the slides.
Right on.
No direct questions as of now. I think feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question if you don't want to.
Gail, I see your hands up.
Yes, I just the sentence that you had, you don't know what you don't know.
Yes.
I keep hearing that in different venues. I'm in different, you know, been taking different classes and or been in different workshops, and it's like a mantra almost now, you know, because I keep hearing that. It's just very ironic, I thought, and coincidental.
Yeah. You know, I didn't really understand that fully until recently. I'm getting a lot more of that, like just how much you don't know until you know it, right? It seems so counterintuitive and easy, but really, that's a really deep subject. I heard something on Oprah one time that really made a huge impression on me. She had Maya Angelou on one of her programs, and Maya Angelou said, I know I'm mispronouncing her last name and I apologize, but she said, I learn things at different levels, you know. I'll learn a thing at one level and it'll make this sort of sense to me. And then I'll learn it again later and it'll make more sense and more sense. And the more I learn it, the deeper it gets, you know. And that makes a lot of sense to me.
It makes a lot of sense to me too, because I think I've learned this at a different level as far as like, I do want to master it. And I'm so glad we're talking about it. I feel like as a doula and a peer support specialist, that holding space for someone and just being completely open and wherever I can, empowering their power, I guess, and uplifting them is the level that I learned this on. And now I want to go into the level of mastering and completely understanding this, because it's so important and it works. It really does work, just to hold space and be person-centered. It's the way to go. I love it.
You've been practicing holding space and it's been making a big impact in people's lives. So you'd like to get much better at it.
Absolutely.
So we have Alex has his hand up, and then Katie.
Sure, Alex.
Yeah.
Thanks, Julie.
Actually, I think I was going to talk about Katie because she was pointing out that isn't that now a judgment of where we think we should be? It doesn't honor that they are the expert on themselves. And I think though the video kind of leaned into like, okay, let this person believe that they have the nail. And because he started listening to her all of a sudden, and that's where she kind of like, oh, it's not about the nail. You're actually listening to what I believe to be true. So I heard what you said, Katie, and then I was kind of like, oh, I think the video leaned into that a little bit.
Sort of how holding space for somebody like lowers their shields a bit so that they can actually do some exploration
Because
instead of
automatically we want to take that nail out, right?
yeah,
Instead of like, well, why do you think that nail is there?
sort of like
Even if they're not
my
aware of
squeaky
it.
belts. When I bring it up
Right.
to the vets here, they're all, well, go to the mechanic. What's wrong with you? I mean, why haven't you fixed it? There's YouTube videos all over the place, And thanks, Alex. Katie, did you have a question?
Oh, it just that was sort of my comment, is that the nail, and like if we perceive that people should be doing something differently, that's really a judgment in our own self. That's not necessarily like the change that people will or will want to make for themselves. And so I always try to, whenever I feel that pull to with people I'm supporting, to like, here's what you should do, is I recognize, like I've trained myself to like recognize that that's a part where I should pull back, because my like role as a peer is not about advice. My role as a peer is to like empower other people to figure out what it is they need to do for themselves.
Yeah, I get that, Katie. Like there's something that's important to you in a direction you're going in. And so you automatically want other people to find that important and go in that direction too. But that might not be what's important for that person or most helpful for that person at the time. Thank you for highlighting that.
We have another question in the chat. How do you overcome your personal barriers to adjusting to person-centered communication? Like when you feel yourself going back to trying to be the expert.
That's what that's it right there. So we're going to be in just a minute here, we're going to be talking about some practice exercises you can do with your colleagues at work that are really helpful. Real basic. It seems too basic until you do it. And then it's not basic, as Brian can tell you. When you start getting feedback on the way you're communicating, you can figure out that you're not doing quite what you thought you'd do. Or let me go to I statements here, because I'm doing that global thing. When I get feedback on the way I'm communicating with people, it really shocks me how I've kind of slipped into old habits. So just regular practice with an outside observer can be super helpful, and that's what we're going to talk about. Easy practice.
We have another. How do you know what you don't know?
You don't. That's the problem. That's a solid question. You really don't. And that's why it's important to help the person figure out what they need and want and what's important to them versus what I need and what's important to me, because I don't know what I don't know. Let me see here. I think I've lost my slideshow. I'm going to try and figure it out here. Oh, there we go. All right. So we're going to jump into the next section here. So what are some of the components of person-centered communication? Like, how do we make this happen? And like I said, I'm sure you've all had, oops, let me change this. I'm not looking at myself again because that drives me bananas. I'm sure you've all had practice at this and had times where you've learned about this. So I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel, just kind of putting some extra grease on, So what does it do? It mirrors human experience. So what you're doing is you're holding space for someone. And I know holding space is a big part of peer support. And the interesting thing is when you create a vacuum or an empty space, nature has this thing where it wants to rush in and fill that empty space. So that gives that person a chance to try and fill the void instead of, for me. So you want to leave plenty of space for the person to talk, give them a chance to feel a little uncomfortable. Being uncomfortable is a big part of this. Being uncomfortable on my part, making, kind of leaving some room for that person to be a little uncomfortable is important too. Let the bubble pop. Don't hurry to fill the dead time. Give them, count to 10 in your head. Do a slow 10 count. And then if they haven't said anything, maybe you're at a point where you should say something. Maybe pepper in a little bit of your own experience. And it's okay. As peer specialists, one of the biggest bonuses that we have versus a lot of traditional practitioners is we can talk about our experience. We're supposed to talk about our experience. If you're talking to a psychologist, I have a very good friend who's a psychologist, one of my colleagues, but she was strictly trained never, ever share your own experiences. Don't talk about your life, about your family, about anything that's happened to you. And we don't have to do that. A big part of our job is to be vulnerable, be open. As a caveat to being vulnerable and open, I'm doing a presentation on how to avoid burnout tomorrow. So be vulnerable and open. So it's okay to say, hey, Man, I remember feeling like that. Gosh, that's cool. But for the most part, you want to leave it open to where the person wants to go. It's a judgment-free zone. Even if you're just making judgments in your head, and I know that I'm really bad at this when I'm talking to my wife, which is funny because I practice a lot at work, but I'm horrible at this when I'm talking to my family and stuff. Even when you're just holding a judgment in your head, it comes out of your voice, it comes out of the expressions. What do they say? 90% of all communication is nonverbal, and that can come out. Even saying uplifting things that are meant to help someone feel better, um, can direct the conversation and push it in a different way. Oh, that's great. Oh, I'm really happy to hear that. Well, that sounds wonderful. All those things are kind of sending a cue to the person. They're like, hey, this is the direction I want this conversation to go in. This is where I think you should be going. And so, or, obviously saying, well, that's horrible. I can't believe you did that, can push the conversation in another direction. So we want to stay as non-judgmental as possible. Just keep things neutral. Um, so we're not kind of sending people down the path that we want them to be on. Try and avoid labels like good or bad, great, awful. It can be hard to do because it's sort of, there's a lot of societal pressure to make someone feel better, and we're not here to make you feel better. We're here to help you figure out what's going on. You're a curious detective. You really want to pick that person's brain. And people I've found, and maybe not in all cases because everyone's different, but I found that if I am genuinely curious about someone, they feel more apt to share. Oh my gosh, I didn't know that. Tell me more, Wow, it's really interesting. Even if it's something I feel like I have a really deep knowledge pool on, getting a person's perspective can be really interesting. They're the expert, and I really want to know what the expert has to say, yeah. Wow, I really love hearing from the expert. Ask open-ended questions. Um, Open-ended questions. It's funny. A few years ago, a lot of years ago, before I was a peer specialist, I was a cable guy, and before that, I installed security alarms, and so I studied sales, so I could upsell people security alarm components. And one thing that's really big in sales is to keep open-ended questions going with the dialogue. You don't want to shut the dialogue down. You want to keep it going. And so you ask open-ended questions, As soon as you start asking yes or no questions, or closed-ended questions, did you do 2 or 3? 3, okay. That just kind of closes things off. So you want to really do your best to come up with open-ended questions. It can be tough sometimes, but it gets easier with practice. And of course, base your questions on the narrative. This does not come easy to me. I've had to learn to do this with my family, with the people that I love, and with the people I'm working with. It's challenging. No offering advice. I mean, advice is okay. Sometimes you could say, well, you know what worked for me, blah, blah, blah. But like with the squeaky belts, I already knew all that stuff. Like I knew about the mechanic and I knew about YouTube videos and I knew about the soap, they're all great pieces of advice. But really what I was asking for was not how to do something. I was asking for why I should do it, and a lot of what we're going to be talking to people about is why. So, and this includes advice in the form of a question. I think that that's sort of a cheating way of slipping in some advice. Have you thought about doing some research on Google? Oh, um, it as soon as you start asking advice, it does the same thing as offering judgments. It sort of says, I want you to go this way. Let's go down this path. And that's what we're going to talk about. And it takes away the person's ability to figure out where they're going. Offer reflections. Reflections are what create that mirrored surface. When you bounce things back at people that you're saying to you, you're creating a more clear picture of what they're saying. I had a guy the other day, oh, I don't want to breach confidentiality. He was talking about, I have a new home environment and I really don't like it. And I just can't get better because the new environment's so bad. And so I bounced it back on him. I said, you're just never going to be able to thrive in this environment. It's just not going to happen. And he goes, whoa, did I just say that? That's not what I said, is it? And it just really caught him by surprise, because he'd probably said that over the course of the conversation like 20 times, but he wasn't seeing it from somebody else's perspective. It might also help people see the emotional connections that they're missing. A lot of times there's a deeper level connection that's there, that's directing what they're doing, but they might not be catching it because it's so deeply wired that it just happens without even making a flash on their radar. Affirmations are really good, not cheerleading, but like when that guy I was working with said, hey, I really liked working with people. And I said, you like working with people? You know, I really liked helping people. You like helping people. And you're sort of affirming what's important to him without directing what I think is important to him. And there's a bunch of different types of reflections. Reflections is a whole, we could do a whole 2-hour presentation on different types of reflections. I'll do a little talk about that, but explore values and value conflicts. This is one of the big takeaways I got from the whole health coaching training, is that often our our values are in conflict. Even when we don't see something as a value, it's in conflict. Help people discover what's important to them, and uncover where they want and what they're doing are in conflict. Like, example, you really value a clean house, but also taking some downtime to rest, you know? Maybe they don't see watching a TV show after work as getting some downtime in, and are really hard on themselves. Oh, I should be cleaning the house, but instead I'm just being lazy. Well, maybe that's a value. Maybe having some downtime is a value. And right now you're saying there's some conflict between wanting to have some rest and relaxation and really wanting a clean environment. I love using the on one hand technique. On one hand, you know, you really value a clean house, but on the other hand, you feel like you need some quiet space to recharge from your day. On one hand, on the other hand, typically on the other hand is sort of an uplifting side of what they're saying. On one hand, you have a lot of trouble being around people, but on the other hand, you get lonely and connecting makes you feel good. You know, where are the conflicts here? Where are what they're saying and where they want to go kind of running into each other? So reflections and person-centered communication. So reflecting is just bouncing back what someone has said back to them so they can see it outside of their own head. There's a bunch of different types of reflecting. The hardest one for me is the one where I talk the least, and that's parroting. And that's where you just say like one word back. And it also sounds sort of weird when you say just one word back to somebody. Sometimes I think I speak really loudly when I'm talking in public, and I just say loudly, you know, and they're like, it seems like that's gonna be a weird, but usually it works really. If for some reason it'll help someone see the train of their own thought and keep going. So parroting is really important, just using 1 or 2 words and sending that back to the person to kind of reaffirm what they've said and give them a picture of what they said outside of themselves. Paraphrasing can be really good for that too. Just keeping it loud. You know, you speak really loudly in public, which, you know, helping them see what they said. And then a summary. But you got to be careful with a summary because sometimes you might not really be getting the gist of what they're saying. So if you're trying to just kind of like boil it down to the essence, it's good to ask somebody, you know, or just to make sure that they're not, you know, oh, so you said such and such, and they're like, oh, that's not really what I meant. I'm like, oh, okay, well, you know, it can help you have a better understanding of what they're saying and help them too, because they might not have really had a deeper level understanding of what they're saying yet. Complex reflection get a little more challenging, and that's where you're adding to or possibly highlighting what someone has emphasized. So like a double-sided reflection. I'm taking, like I said, on the one hand, on the other hand is one version of a double-sided reflection. Most of the time that talks about conflicting values and where what someone says might be conflicting with what they want. Deeper meaning reflections is another one we have to be careful because this takes a lot of practice. And they can be really super powerful and insightful when you help somebody maybe see behind the movie screen kind of pick out the great and glorious Oz behind that screen. And sometimes you might just be wrong. So I try to just reserve these for when I'm really feeling in sync with somebody, like we're really vibing and we've been, really connected. And then, oh, I see, you know, so you just really have had a hard time transitioning, and because you're having a hard time, you're isolating. Like, oh, help them maybe find the deeper meaning of the challenge that they've been raising. Metaphors are really fun too. I love using metaphors. I don't know why I'm a metaphor person. Not everybody's a metaphor person. Probably because I read a lot of old books when I was a kid. So I got a lot of these old timey metaphors stuck in my head. So I'll throw those out sometimes too, and they can be really helpful. We're gonna pause again for a quick Q&A, but we kind of got to hurry because we're running out of time and I want to get to a practice session. Do we have one or two quick questions I can answer?
There was one that came through saying, I have someone I work with who talks every session, the whole hour, about how everyone has and is mistreated him. I don't get a word in if I assert myself. This has been going on 2 years. Thoughts, suggestions?
That's really tough. Sounds like that person's really stuck in their loop, I'm sorry about that. That can be really challenging, especially when you're holding space for someone who's stuck in a loop, and you see the nail very clearly for 2 years. No, all I can say is just to parrot back what they're saying. Everyone mistreats you. Life's hard. Send it back at them. They might not see it. If they've been saying the same thing over and over again for years, they might be blind to it. Sort of like learning a new swing. Sort of like using an incorrect swing when you're playing tennis. You might have learned to do something when you're swinging in a tennis racket that is sending the ball over the fence and you don't know it, but you're so used to hitting that way that you kind of get blind to it. And I think that person might be, maybe not, but might be a bit blind to what they're saying. And so sending it back to them can be a really powerful tool. Just real simple parroting, Any other quick questions? So practice makes perfect. How can we get better at this? Practice, practice, practice. What I do with the veterans here, this is sort of fun and it's sort of hard. And it sort of seems like it should be easy, especially if you're someone in our field who talks to people all the time. But I almost always find this to be really challenging. I don't know why I'm not advancing here. Is to do a little practice sessions, 5-minute practice sessions. One thing they usually highlight is we might think we're doing a lot of this stuff already, but when we practice, we kind of know a little bit more about where we're at. This style of communication can feel really counterintuitive, like using parroting by sending things back to people. And when we practice, of course, the more we practice something, the more effective it gets. Empathy is a muscle that we can train. We have mirror neurons in our head, neurons that are specifically designed to mirror someone's emotional state when we're working with them. It's a survival tool. If you've ever watched a movie where you felt like it was funny or scary or something, and you know that it's a movie and you know that it's fake and it's a script and that everybody's acting and they're on a stage, but you still felt an emotional connection, then your mirror neurons have been in effect in your life. So you can mirror what someone's feeling. You're built for it. It just takes practice. There's a great book called Search Inside Yourself. I'd highly recommend it. It was written by, of all places, someone at Google, but it's phenomenal. It really breaks down mindfulness and meditative practices into a really simple, a really simplified version of it, and it's just fantastic. But he talks about mirror neurons, and he talks about creating like an emotional connection with people and working on that muscle, becoming more attuned to what emotions people are feeling. So what I thought I would do is just do a basic practice session with Brian to show you what it looks like, and then we can break into some small groups and do a little practice ourselves, and then come back and talk about what that was like. So this is what a basic practice session looks like. This is just the basics. One person is the speaker, and they'll have a problem, and the other person is going to be the listener. The problem person is going to outline a small problem, not a big problem, like we're not trying to cure cancer here, especially not when we're practicing. So just a small problem that you might be having, like squeaky belts in your car. The listener follows a set of rules. So leave plenty of space for the person to talk. Like I said, if there's dead space, I want you to count to 10 in your head before you fill it. Keep your judgments out of the conversation and really work on just having a judgment-free zone. Offer simple reflections if you can. Let the person know that you're listening by reflecting back what they're saying. No advice, especially not in the form of a question. No advice at all. So this can be really hard at times for me because I love giving advice, and telling people what to do is my favorite thing. So not giving any advice at all, and just asking open-ended questions, no closed-ended questions. Like I said, this sounds fairly simple, but it can be very challenging, especially if we're going to do it in front of, say, 43 odd people for a seminar. But I think right now, Brian and I are going to do a real quick practice session. Brian is going to be the person with a problem. I'm going to be the listener. And we're just going to do like a 4-minute practice session. And then we'll break you into small groups. I think we have time. And you all can do 4-minute practice sessions on your own. So what do you think, Brian? You ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, let me get out of this share mode just so I can see you a little better. All right, I'm gonna see if I can pin you up here. Okay, again, folks, this is much harder to do for an audience. So if I mess up, please give me a little bit of space. Hi, Brian, how are you?
Good, thank you.
How's your day going?
Not too bad, not too bad. Living the dream.
So what did you want to talk about today?
So I'm trying to cut out sodas. I know they're terrible for me. And I drink too many, and I want to cut down to 0.
Cut down.
Well, actually, completely cut out is my goal.
Cut out.
Yes. I'm having a hard time. It seems like they're just delicious, and like when I go to my parents, they always have soda in the fridge, and it seems like I go there every day because my daughter goes there after school, so I pick her up there, and the refrigerator's in the garage right by the door, so I go right by it when I go inside, and so yeah, having a hard time cutting those out.
So you're having a hard time because they're just so accessible.
Right, yes. And I know they're bad for me, and they're, but I just enjoy them so much.
How do you know that they're bad for you?
Because of all the sugar in them, and I noticed that I feel good for a little bit after I have it, but then I feel like I'm crashing because I don't really drink too much caffeine, besides, the soda. And I don't ever buy soda for my house. It just seems to be when I go over to my parents.
So you really feel good for a minute, but then you feel a big crash.
Right, yeah, like I get this burst of energy from all the sugar and caffeine, but then that crash from afterwards.
So
And it's not like I really enjoy it because it's like I just chug it down anyway. I drink it like a couple minutes and then it's gone. And so I think it would be different if I was actually enjoying it and sitting down and drinking it like a cup of coffee or something like that. But I'm not even doing that.
So it gives you a burst of pleasure, but then a lot of the downside's way bigger than the little bit of pleasure that you're getting.
Right, exactly.
What have you done in the past to kind of limit the amount of sodas that you drink? What have you done before?
Well, I started, but I quit buying soda at all for my house. I try to drink a bunch of water so that way I'm not thirsty. But the problem seems to be just when I go to my parents.
Okay,
which I have to do because I have to pick up my daughter.
Can you pause for a second?
Yeah.
So I don't know if you noticed, I'm not following my own rule, counting to 10 in my head, because there's been like 3 times now Brian's had more to say, and I've started to step on what he was saying because I wasn't patient enough to just sit with the empty space for a minute, and let it churn and let it come out on its own. So I just wanted to highlight that. So it sounds like what you're saying, the biggest challenge is that when it's around, you just have a hard time not getting into it. And although you can limit the access at your own place, you have a hard time limit the access at other people's places, specifically the people that you love.
Yeah, I can't really tell my parents that they can't buy soda anymore because I can't control my own urges to have it. I guess that's not really fair to them. But as we were talking, then I started thinking about things that, well, maybe I just don't go through the garage. Maybe use the front door. Call my daughter when I get there to have her come outside. I started thinking about things that could possibly help solve this issue.
It sounds like this can really, it's also kind of limiting the amount of time you spend with your parents because it's such a big challenge.
Right. Yeah. It's hard. Yeah. Like to go over there for dinner, which I do, maybe once a week or something like that, or once every other week. It's hard not to have a soda over there when I'm having dinner.
So you need to interact with your parents. Your parents are really helping with your daughter, but it also is kind of creating some conflict because you don't want to have access to something that's hurting you.
Right. Yeah. I have all these other healthy habits like getting up and working out in the morning, things like that. But then I feel like that time I spent working out is kind of wasted because I just drink
It's
this thing
wasted.
that's terrible for me.
It's wasted.
Yeah.
Are there other things that you've tried that kind of help? So it sounds like you've set up a lot of physical boundaries, like for yourself. But are there other things that kind of help you avoid soda when it's in the around you?
I just being more mindful of it. I guess I think it's more of like an autopilot thing. Like I'm just in the habit of grabbing a soda when I go over there. I just get done working. I'm kind of exhausted from the day, and I think it's just a habit that I need to get out of doing.
So the bigger struggles, the habit, and you're saying that being more aware of the habit's been helpful.
Right. Yeah. Because by the end of the day, I'm mentally and physically kind of more exhausted, so I don't have that willpower to not get like when I drop my daughter off in the morning before school, I don't grab a soda. So maybe just being more mindful about it as I go there and being, knowing that it's an issue, having that thought in my head, before I even get out of my car.
So being more aware that when you're tired, it's harder to resist.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks, Brian. Thank you for talking with me.
Yeah.
So that's what it looks like. Real simple. 4 minutes. We're gonna break you all into groups of 2. Is that hard to do, Melissa? I think I said groups of 3, but I don't know if we have time for 3.
So we're down to 39. So it's 38, 37, 36, 35. A lot of people are dropping off. Let's go ahead and do breakout rooms of 2 for 5 minutes, Aaron?
Yeah. So we're gonna take turns. We're gonna do 4 minutes apiece. We're gonna do one
Okay.
person's the speaker, one person's the listener. Did y'all got that so far? Like I said,
then
no
that'll
offering
be
advice.
8 minutes.
Leave space for the person to talk. Let the bubble pop, and we'll bring you all back in about 10 minutes to just do a little Q&A and see how it felt.
So let's see, we got 32, 2 into 32, 15, 16.
Should we hold on a second, Melissa?
Yeah.
Let me open this up to gallery view real quick. How many people want to practice this right now, and how many people would just like to do a Q&A? How many people would like to practice this right now? Raise your hands. 2, 3, 4. 4 out of 39 so far. Let's see what the other page looks like. And how many people here would just like to do the Q&A instead? Can I see a show of hands? Way more. Okay, tell you what, we're just gonna do the Q&A, but that's actually part of this is it's really hard to practice. It seems like it should be really easy. I've been having the same conversation like I had with Brian a minute ago for 8 years, and I was still struggling to think of what to say to him at a couple spots. I'm sure you felt that when we were having our dialogue. So let's let me finish the slideshow and then we'll just wrap it up with like a 15-minute Q&A. How does that sound? Okay. Um, do, 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 do. All right. So basic practice session. One person has a problem, one person's a listener. The person who's listening, you want to leave plenty of dead air. Keep your judgments out of the conversation. Only ask open-ended questions and do your best to avoid offering advice. It's really challenging. I would actually recommend having 3 people involved. One person speaking, one person doing the listening and the reflecting, and then one person acting as a referee. Not a vocal referee, but just someone that can be helpful, because sometimes if I have a blind spot in the way I communicate with other people, I'm not going to see it. Just like we're helping people find their blind spots. Having a third person to kind of play coach can be super helpful to seeing maybe the way you have a blind spot in the way you communicate. Oh, weird. My presentation's doing something bizarre here. Let me see if I can find it. There's another type of practice session you can do. So that's a basic practice session. We can do a reflections practice session where all you do is offer reflections for 5 minutes. Same kind of basic setup. You have one person that's a speaker, one person that's a listener, but the listener is going to be offering just a series of simple and more complex reflections. And then at the very end of the session, go ahead and do a summary. You know, this is what you said. This is what we discovered. Am I correct? And let the other person let you know if you're correct. Like I said, mirror neurons are fantastic. Empathy is a muscle, though, and the more you work out that muscle, the stronger it gets. So, in fact, in that book that I was talking about earlier, oh my gosh, why can't I think about it? Probably because I'm
Look inside yourself.
search inside yourself. Yeah, he
Search
talks
inside yourself.
about empathetic practice sessions where someone will display an emotion and then their partner will practice guessing about that emotional feeling. Like, oh, you're feeling like this and this. Yes, that's correct. No, that's not correct. But the more you practice, the better you can get this. So it's important to offer a summary and then just get feedback on that summary to see if you're on the right track or not. This is one I haven't tried yet. So I'm just throwing this out with a cautionary tone. An empathetic practice session. This is what I got in Search Inside Yourself. And this is where the person who's speaking talks about an emotional experience. You don't say like, I'm angry and I was feeling so this or that. Just talk about the experience and then see if the listener can pick out the emotions involved in that dialogue. And that's more too, I guess, again, to practice and to trying to get like a solid grip. Just get better at guessing at feeling, sensing feeling, kind of flowing with somebody. There's something I didn't put in these slides that I think is really important. And that's if you're doing this right and you get good at it, you get into a flow state. And that's something else that they talk about in Search Inside Yourself is flow states. And that's when you're doing something that you're so into, that you're getting so much benefit out of, so much value that you lose sense of time. And I love that when I'm working with somebody and I'm not looking at the clock anymore and I'm not trying to figure out when our session's going to end. I'm just there with them and they're the expert and they're taking me on a journey through their subconscious. It's super fun and it's just great. It's really enjoyable. And I think the person's getting a lot of value out of it. I don't know. That's the best thing in the world. You know, that's fantastic. That's why I do what I do, you know, is to help people find that those core values that really give them a lot of fulfillment and enjoyment. And just the way I talk to them, I think really does that. Oops. All right. So in summary, helping someone find their why is so important, so much more important than helping them find their how to do something. Identifying values is really the key to helping someone find their why. What's valuable to you? What's important to you? What is it in your life that gives you joy and meaning? Person-centered communication really helps someone find their why. Takes the pressure off of us to be the expert and gives us the role of investigator. Like, I really want to know what the expert has to say, and helps that person find their own way, which is going to be miles more significant in the long term in their life. And this takes practice. It's counterintuitive. Some people are better at it than others. As peer specialists, I think that we are naturally inclined to be good at this because that's built into what we do, and every aspect of our job is helping people find their own way, but it still takes practice. So we got a few minutes left. What questions do you have? Jump on in. Anybody have questions out there?
I don't know how to raise my hand, but I do have a question.
All right, Cassandra.
So without going into too much detail, I have a therapist at my agency that does not believe in me sharing my story with clients. So I would ask, what can I do to try to connect with this client until I can educate this therapist that is a part of my role, is to share my experience with this client. But because of that, I've been working with this client for over a year now, and I still am not making the progress because I can't share, what I've overcame that I know that would help her in a certain way, but I can't share it. So I guess what can I do to try to connect with this client a little bit easier without sharing experiences? Because it has got me in trouble, for sharing an experience, with her about my past. So that would be my question for help.
Well, one thing, Cassandra, I really want to validate what you're saying. I think one of the biggest challenges that peer support faces is that we get supervisors that don't understand peer support, and they want to mold us in their image. So that she wants to make you into a junior psychologist instead of a peer supporter. And psychologists don't share their own experience. That's baked into their model so deeply ingrained that she's putting that on you. That's a really tough call. I don't know, man. I did a presentation last week for supervisors of the VA, and there's probably 30 supervisors there. And that's one of the big questions that we got is like, whoa, peers can share their experience. It was kind of a burst of insight for half the supervisors on the call. I'm not sure what to say, except that reflecting back to her, what she's saying to you can really help her figure out what you had to figure out the hard way. And that that even there might even be the case that if you share what it's not going to have an impact because it's not the path that she's on, or it may not be where she needs to be right now. The way that I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying it's a tough one. And I, after coming to this conference, this is the first one for me. I am going back with my notepad and some educational information for this therapist to read, and resources that she can research to let her know that this is my role, that I am to share my experience. And if nothing else, maybe we don't work together, because we see different views with clients.
Yeah. You're not just a junior psychologist. You're a peer specialist, and that's a unique and beautiful thing. I don't know. The only thing I can really think myself is to find some job postings from different organizations, and then ask that person kindly to read through them. I mean, they might see that baked into the description is share our experience, strength, and hope with somebody so they can find their own way. Thank
Katie
you, Cassandra.
also had her hand up.
Yeah, Katie.
Oh, I was just gonna suggest a
I saw yours too, Brenda. Sorry. Go ahead, Katie.
I was just gonna suggest some research that you might, obviously, clearing up what a peer specialist role is very important. But, in the meantime, using some of the information that's from community inclusion, in terms of supporting people through being in the community and making different kinds of connections and stuff like that. And that may be convincing sooner with the clinical person, because it's based in research as well. So the Temple University Collaborative on Community Inclusion has some really wonderful like toolkits and stuff like that. And you know, having some of that research behind their name sometimes helps like smooth that over until there's a greater understanding about what your role is. But I definitely sympathize with you because I felt like I've been in that sort of position before as well, just in terms of like, you really don't understand what I'm supposed to be doing here. And that's why you're unsatisfied with what's happening. So.
Thank you.
I have to say something too, is I've started to look at our supervisors with a bit more compassion, you know, that they genuinely don't know what we're supposed to be doing. And they're genuinely acting out of an area of ignorance in their own blind spot. They just can't see it. So I think too, if you approach your supervisor with a kind of with some compassion too, although it's, yeah, mind-numbingly frustrating to hit that wall over and over again and to know that you're right, but that, you know. Thank you, Katie. Brenda, I saw that you had your hand up.
Yes, I just, excuse me, I just think that's so unfortunate for what Cassandra has shared with us, because our code of conduct, our code of ethics is to share our lived experience. So, I mean, that's very unfortunate.
Yeah, gosh, it'd be great if your supervisor had somebody else in the field who is a supervisor but knows this, that to talk with, you know. It's I kind of explain it as a superpower. Like our superpower is sharing our experience. It's something that no other practitioner has the ability to do, that we have the ability to do. And yeah, it's a very special thing. Thank you, Cassandra. Any other questions out there?
Well, Aaron, I saw early on in the chat, something was mentioned about bounded questions, and I don't understand what that means.
Bonded questions?
In the chat box, it said bonding questions. Yeah.
Bonding questions.
I said bonded
Does
question.
it mean bounding?
I said, I commented bonded question.
Okay.
And it's a term I just use when there's an ulterior motive attached to the question. Like if somebody already knows the answer to the question, or a person asking the question, but it's really a statement. It's just something I say because it seems like there's another motive bonded to that question. So.
Okay.
I don't
really
think
like
it's an
that.
official thing. I just say it. I don't know.
It's sort of like when I said no giving advice in the form of a question. That's the spirit of what I was going for. Thanks, Penny. I appreciate putting like putting a word to it. Bonded question. Thank you. I'm gonna try and incorporate that into the way I think, you know. So it's not just advice, it's like other directional questions, right? Yeah, that could be a really, wow. And why is a bonded question good or a bad thing?
Sometimes I feel bullied if somebody who is in a position of authority over me asks me a question that they already know the answer to, and especially like if it's in a group environment. So I guess that's the example that's coming to my head right now.
So it sometimes you feel bullied when someone asks you a bonded question.
Or like somebody said another term for that, like a loaded question.
A loaded question.
Okay.
Yeah. One of my favorite things to do in group is to ask someone a question that they don't really know the answer to, and I watch the smoke pour out of their ears. And I wonder if that's like a bullying behavior on my part. I'm gonna have to think about that. I think it's helpful because it helps people think about stuff at a much deeper level, but at the same point, I appreciate that perspective, and I'm gonna have to kind of give that a lot more thought before I use that technique more often, in my group settings. So yeah, any other questions? We have a couple minutes left. So you're all riveted and just fascinated, and your mind's been blown, and you just can barely hold on to your seat right now. Well, or I get to say, hey, thank you all so much. It's been a pleasure being here. Like I said, this is something that I'm really passionate about, and just being able to share that with you all has been just phenomenal. I hope that it's offered something that you didn't have coming into the conversation. That was my goal, is that you could take home something new today, or a new concept, new idea, just something that helps you when you're helping others. So thank you all so much. And thank you too, Brian, my ride along. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Great job,
Oh.
Aaron. That was amazing.
Thank you. Well,
And go ahead.
yeah, go.
I'm sending you an email also with the email addresses that I was able to capture.
That's fantastic. Yeah, anybody that, thank you. Oh, looks like there's another one.
Oh, one more. Okay.
Yeah, anyone that wants the slides, I'll be happy to send them to you.
Right
And they'll
in
be on the
time.
website later if you don't get them directly from me. So thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate it. Good luck, Cassandra.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Julie. And thanks, Melissa. I really appreciate it.
Yes, of course. My pleasure. I also have a passion for this myself.
Right on.
Yeah, makes it a lot easier, right?
I think that's why I was kind of concerned about giving this talk today, is because it's something that everybody is kind of trained to do anyway. So I didn't want to reinvent the wheel, but I think I was able to bring some new insights to it, that people might not have heard before.
Yes, no, you were. Is from my perspective, I thought it was great.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah.
I'm going to be the ride along for a presentation this afternoon, so I'll see how that goes with Paul Mills.
You're all warmed up. You're ready to go.
Right?
Okay, Aaron, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the conference. And,
yeah, you too. Thank you.
We'll see you around.
All right. Bye, Melissa. Thanks
Bye.
again.
Yeah.